What's cooking, folks? Vermillion Phoenix here, and today I'm jumping into some more Orcs Unchained. This time we're going to revisit the Wall on War Mage, mainly so that I get the opportunity to talk about the recent changes to Stinkeye, which unfortunately has seen quite a significant rework in the 1.8 patch. I mean, there's some ups and downs, and I'll try to go through all of them, as Weavers have changed very drastically, as well as the actual effect of his skills. He no longer has his lasers, so if that was something that you guys were planning on using, I'd say you want to rethink that now. But I'll show some of what he's capable of doing here and talk a bit about his Weavers in-game, so let's go ahead, jump in, and take a look.
Eyeballs on toast sounds delicious right now.
That sounds absolutely disgusting. But maybe that's just me. Alright, here we go. So, Stinkeye. Interesting character. He was always sort of an oddball. He originally played as a support character when Siege was still in the game, but that's long gone since the 1.6 patch. Now, what they've decided to do is they've changed Shaman's Blessing to give you a few different things. First, the totems have been made larger so that they're easier to hit when enemies are running through them. This means that for the Wrath of Osiris totem, you can fire at the top of it and get it to fire as shots. Now, it doesn't look like it, but these shots actually home in on enemies, and the totem itself fires a shot every few seconds. Now, when the totem expires, it drops a mana mote. The mana mote will restore all of your mana. And so, for characters that have small mana pools or that happen to have, a lot of mana-heavy abilities that they can spam, specifically, I would say pairing Stinkeye with characters like, say, Bianca or Blackpaw, you have the ability to basically keep their mana topped off and make sure that they stay effective pretty much forever. Now, the Zephyr of Osiris totem, this lovely guy here, still offers its speed boost to friendlies when they are in its area and slows down enemies, but it no longer allows you to shoot it as many times for the stuns as it did before. You fire at it once, it'll stun, and then disappears, again dropping that mana mote that you can pick up. His right click pretty much has not changed at all. Arcane Anomaly. You get a nice little arcane bubble there that explodes after about 2.5 seconds, and when that's done, you deal damage to everything in the area. Now, see if we can actually look at the Weavers before we try to automatically get this started. Alright.
No minions getting through this.
Not really going for par times or anything here, so I probably should have.
Maybe over here. Maybe over here. This is so nice.
Okay.
This is so nice.
That's good enough. Either way, now that I have some traps set up, I can actually talk. The Psalm of Speed is a little different than it used to be, I think. This increases the area of effect by 35%, which gives you a much larger speed boost and slow area on your totem. The Distance Doctrine allows you to place totems farther, which doesn't really seem like that big of a deal. His Tier 1 Weavers are really not that interesting. The probably most important one for players that don't have a huge selection of traits is going to be the Acolyte Advantage, which will allow you to gain health regeneration near your totems and friendly heroes. So if you're playing with people, it'll give you HP regeneration, which may or may not be useful to you, depending on exactly what your playstyle is with Stinkeye. Now, previously, because of the way the lasers would work, it was to your advantage to just hop into the enemies and have totems placed and be wary or aware of, you're not wary because you're not really afraid of anything. Be aware of where you were when your totems expired, because that's where things would go. You really don't have to do that now. Stinkeye plays a lot safer as a ranged character, so you don't really have to go and jump into enemies as much. Now, he has, I think, the highest health pool for any ranged character in the game. So that's still pretty significant, but he is slow. So as you've seen with characters like Hogarth and Bianca, the slower a character is, generally the higher the health pool that robot has been giving them. So that makes a bit of sense. Now, with the Wrath of Osiris totem, it now has a specific amount of time that it remains active, and so you can basically just choose to continuously fire at it until it expires, and then when it expires, cast another one. I believe that the totem is supposed to be able to fire at itself if you have more than one out, which is a very late game weaver. I think you're able to pick that up at level 10. But I don't really see it happening here.
No minions getting through this.
Alright, so still using the loadout that I used to help go through. I think, geez, what was the last video I put up? I apologize, I'm just coming off of being sick again, so I'm doing this like super early in the morning. The Orcatraz, there we go. Oh crap, did not mean to get rid of that. So I don't have a slow in here like I normally would, but since I am not using I'm not close enough for that to even matter. Guess I'll get the free mana though. Alright, now these guys are done. Let's see if while we're going up there. Alright, so tier 2 mana words, they will happen eventually.
Enemies are attacking on another front. No minions getting through this. I am so.
There we go. Alright, so you can see that I'm not really, well, I'm over leveled. Like, that's one of the first things to mention here. So HP or damage taken from the enemies isn't really a big issue for me. I expect that my traps will be able to more than handle most of the challenges here. But here we have a look at Stinkeye's tier 2 weavers. Now, the first one that I want to point out is Godly Grief, because this is a new weaver that was added in 1.8, and I think makes a significant difference in how you approach what you're going to be doing here. Now, I'm not making significant use of it right now, but when Godly Grief is chosen, and it's really tough to choose over Anomaly All. Anomaly All was nerfed to make it a pretty solid choice, but Godly Grief allows the drops from your totems to actually be able to fill not only mana, but health and, what's the other thing? Health and Unchained. Anomaly All gives you a brief stun that happens whenever an enemy is struck by your arcane anomaly. And while that is really nice, it does not trigger to the smaller anomalies that get created with the later ability that, or weaver, that you get in tier 4. So it's not bad, but it doesn't give you, or I should say Stinkeye doesn't possess overall the same amount of crowd control and chain stunning ability as he used to, which is completely okay. The things that they've seemed to try to tone down for the most recent version of the game definitely seem to be character's ability to chain stun. So effectively he's become like a less controlling version of Ivy, but I think they nerfed his damage a bit too much. Let me actually go ahead and choose a weaver here. I think let's just go with Godly Grief. And now we get us tier 3 weavers, which are already available. We have Skull Saviors, which reduces the totem cooldown by 30%. That doesn't seem like a huge amount, but if you choose to have multiple totems out, it will be. Now, in most cases, Totem Testament, I think, is probably going to be the most solid choice here, because it will take the shots that you get from shooting at the Wrath of Osiris totems and basically add +1 to them, effectively giving you about a 25% damage increase while the totem's out. And flat damage increases are pretty hard to beat. However, I'm going to go ahead and pick up Skull Saver. And once I actually get to the next tier, we're going to go ahead and try to get our double totems going. Now there's 2 sets of double totems that are actually, whoops, alright, whatever, that works. Oh, that was off. Alright, whatever. Whoa, somebody made it through. Gotta be careful with that. Okay, so let's make sure that we take out anything that has even an opportunity to try to get away from us here. One thing that I have noticed about the totems, which is weird, is that previously I believe enemies had the ability to attack the totems. Now they sort of just die. The enemies, that is, not the totems. So I'm not sure what they were thinking with that. Alright, so there's one of the new pickups that will refill everything. Now with the totems choices in tier 4, if you do not choose to take the if you don't choose to take Godly Grief or the decreased totem cooldown with Skull Saviors, Sermon of Speed is probably the best choice here, as it gives you two areas in which you can slow enemies and cause a significant AoE stun. It basically gives you an extra stun, which used to be automatically included, but now it'll have to be taken as a weaver choice. And then I haven't built nearly enough traps over here. Okay, they're gonna run back over here. And there we go. Like, Sermon of Speed is probably the best choice if you are not using a very specific build. If you happen to be running with characters that require you to get a bit close so that you can deal damage to enemies, or you just particularly like Arcane Anomaly, then go ahead and take Arcane Apocalypse. Arcane Apocalypse will allow you to deal a significant amount of damage to tightly packed enemies, but you will wind up taking some damage, and if you happen to be fighting near barricades, it's probably a bad choice. Other than that, it's not bad though. Oh, jeez. Now, for me, because I took Skull Saviors, I'm going to just go ahead and take Angry Oasis. Alright, and now that I have that up, we're going to take another one. So, what you see is when you're near one of the other totems, this will actually just fire at the other totems. And you know what? I think, like, for the way that things are set up now with Stinkeye, if you want to go totem heavy Stinkeye, I like the option of having that available, but I think because of the ways that totems chain together, it might actually be a better idea if they just remove the cap on the Wrath of Osiris, since now it's actually determined by time anyway, and just let you go ahead and have the two. Leave the interaction there with them being able to just chain to each other, and then probably allow the last weaver to increase the duration of the tower itself, or not the tower, but the totem. And what that would do is it would give people the same idea of just the multiple totems being set up and dealing out a ton of damage, and still require the character to remain somewhat stationary. You'd have to localize the area in which you place the towers to get the maximum effect for them, and spacing them out, since they only fire one shot as opposed to the 4 that you would get, would actually be much better. Now, of course, this is completely discounting the fact that let me actually get through this before I keep talking. This is completely discounting the fact that you can literally just keep spamming totems to give people Unchained, which in itself is particularly important because Unchained drops are kind of rare, and the only other way to guarantee that you get them in a party is to focus on building combos. But even so, like, I feel like the reworking of Stinkeye with the significant reduction in damage still requires a little bit more be added to him so that he can deal enough damage to enemies. Because of the nerfs to Unchained that took place in 1.7, as well as his loss of his arcane lasers, he still needs a bit more damage. And while his damage is incredibly consistent now, it is a bit lower as the amount of enemies increase, and very few characters have issues with that. Like melee characters have their cleave damage, characters like mechs get their chain lightning at level 10, and their lightning explosions whenever they kill an enemy, which is way more significant than a lot of people may realize, which is part of the reason why Max does very low damage comparatively, because on death lightning explosions actually add up quite heavily. But still would like to see a DPS increase for Stinkeye in some manner. I like the fact that the totems chain together, but you're talking about, to make one idea work out really well, giving up 2 to 3 weavers, where some characters like, say, Hogarth, don't just get like a small damage bonus from the weavers, but they get like 300 or 400% more damage on their skills from selecting 1 or 2 weavers. So yeah, I think Stinkeye is in a good place right now. I mean, they haven't made him useless, but for things like Endless, he's not going to be a character that you run with solo, and that's probably one of the biggest things. Like, just needing somebody else to actually bring the DPS above Stinkeye is going to be interesting now. I think Hogarth, with his recent changes, actually winds up dealing similar, if not better, damage. But of course, Hogarth is really meant to just kind of sit there and absorb all of the DPS, and then freeze enemies so that everybody else can actually drop their damage and various attacks on them. But either way, that's enough rambling about Stinkeye for today. Hope you guys enjoy this. Let me know what you think about Stinkeye in the 1.8 patch, and hopefully I'll play a few more things with him. Most of the clears that I have with him won't really be possible since they made some use of the arcane laser, so I'll probably have to go back through the restricted section with another character on Riftlord and post that later on in the week. Either way, thanks as always. Thanks again for watching. I sincerely appreciate it. And until next time, folks, as always, have a good one.